Well, joining us now, Congressman Greg Steube. He serves on the House Ways and Means Committee. He represents the 17th Congressional District of Florida. Congressman Steube, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for taking time to join us.
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me.
All right, you've watched the process over the weekend. The current status of the bill, your thoughts?
Well, obviously, they're going through all these different amendments in the Senate side, so we're not going to see the results of the cumulative bill until they get through that. We're being told there's going to be a manager's amendment, which will be a big comprehensive amendment at the very end that would amend the majority of the provisions of the bill. The parliamentarian has struck a lot of the provisions that the House had sent over that were conservative provisions that would have cut illegal immigrants, for example, of getting Medicaid funding and these type of things that obviously conservatives in the House supported. So we'll have to wait and see. It seems as though the expectation is the Senate will pass it either late tonight, early in the morning, and then we are due to go back to the House. I'm going to fly up tomorrow, and then it'll be a vote probably Wednesday morning around 9 o'clock.
So some of the other items that the parliamentarian in what's called the bird bath washed out, there was a defunding of Planned Parenthood. That's been reduced to simply a 12-month defunding of Planned Parenthood. Something that you have worked on hard in the House has been the issue of gender. All of the gender transition issues that were in this bill kept taxpayers out of that. That's all out of the present bill. How hard do you think it's going to be for the House to take this bill as the Senate currently has it? And I know there's going to be some manager amendments, but I'm told that those provisions are not going to make their way back in.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's pretty tall order for the Senate to be able to upset conservatives and moderates on both sides of all these different issues moving forward. They've increased spending considerably, which guys like myself who signed a letter that we wanted to keep the House framework becomes very problematic because they've completely dismissed the House's framework, and it's putting $3.9 trillion on the debt over a 10-year period of time. Now, the White House will say that through tariffs and the economic impact, that'll be reduced and it'll be a deficit neutral bill. But on paper, that's what it says. So it makes it hard for us to vote for that. It's expanding the debt ceiling by $5 trillion, which is obviously hard for conservatives to do because Washington has a spending problem. And this is our once in a generation opportunity to cut the spending in Washington. So it's going to be very difficult to try to thread the needle. We can only lose 3 votes on the House side. If we lose 4, the bill dies. We know that Massey is going to be a no. All of us are kind of waiting to see what that manager's amendment is going to look like and what it's going to look like when it comes over before we start making our decisions. But the bottom line is I don't want to be in the way of tax cuts to the American people. If this bill does not pass, the average family of four's taxes are going to increase by like $3,500 a year. You're going to see small businesses' taxes increase by 20% through the 199A deduction. So this is a huge economic bill as it relates to tax cuts, making Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. The American people have asked for this by voting for President Trump and getting him elected, and we have to deliver for them.
Agree with all that you just laid out there, but let me ask you, Congressman Steube, do you feel like the Senate is jamming Republicans by not really fighting the parliamentarian on some of her rulings?
Yeah, I've asked for her to be fired. I don't know why you would be the leader, the Republican leader of the Senate, and have a parliamentarian who was hired by Harry Reid 12 years ago, over a decade ago. Obviously, she's a Democrat. She was hired by Democrats. She's been there for over a decade. When new leadership comes in, it's under the understanding that new leadership is going to bring in new staff that works for them. It's very frustrating that an unelected bureaucrat who was appointed by Harry Reid is going to determine what provisions are in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, provisions that the majority of the House voted on and sent over to the Senate. So it's very frustrating to see that the leadership over there isn't willing to change their staff. But Thune has said that he's sticking with her and the optics, quote unquote, would look bad. But we got elected by the American people to get a job done. And you have an unelected bureaucrat that's kind of standing in the way of these different provisions, which is very frustrating for myself and very frustrating for a lot of the majority of the House.
So, again, the Republicans in the House have to take what the Senate sends over, even though they didn't really fight for the core values and the core principles, the core elements that were in the House version. Do you think there's the possibility that there is a little bit of a ping pong match, that the House maybe tweaks it and sends it back over?
Yeah, we don't have to take it. We can obviously make our own changes again, but those changes will go back to the Senate. And then the question will be, is the Senate going to be able to pass it again? Obviously, the president doesn't want this thing to ping pong. He wants to have a bill signing on July 4th for his Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, making that permanent for the American people and the things that he campaigned on. So any change that the House would make would cause the bill to go back to the Senate. Any type of conference, whether it be formal or informal, would not make the timeline that the president wants. Obviously, it's a timeline that he has set up. We don't go back into recess until August. We're there the next 3 weeks of July. But that's the timeline that we look at. Any change on the House side, we'll send it back to the Senate. So the question is going to be, once we see what this language is that passes the Senate, is there enough people that have a problem with it that would force it to get changed in the House and then sent back to the Senate side?
It seems that the president may be backing off a little bit of that July 4th deadline because I think he'd rather have a good bill than force a bill through the process prematurely.
I would. I mean, I would support going into a formal conference. I came from the state legislature in Florida where the House came up with a bill, a Senate came up with a bill, you went into conference, you worked out the differences, and the product got sent back down to both of the chambers. I certainly think it would be a better product for the American people, but obviously that's going to take time, and you never know what you change on one side or the other is going to affect other senators or other House members' positions because you have such a slim majority. We can only lose 3 in the House. They can only lose 3 in the Senate. It becomes very challenging politically to get that done. But right. I would err on the side of taking the time necessary to make sure that we get this thing right.
I think part of the concern may be that the Congress is going into a break. People go back home. You get some of this, we've seen some of the fabricated town hall meetings before where, people turn out and put this pressure on some. You're right, with such a slim majority, I think the leadership may be a little hesitant to send people back home for a week or so before there's a vote.
Well, we're up there in the next 3 weeks, but leadership has made it very clear that we're going to be voting on this bill that comes from the Senate regardless of what it looks like. So whatever product comes out of the Senate, we're going to have a vote probably Wednesday is my guess. We're going to be voting on the bill if it passes the Senate on whatever that product is. Now, if there's more than 3 people that says no, they can't vote for it for whatever reason, then that would probably force some type of either informal conference or informal discussions, or they make the changes in the House and then we send it back to the Senate, but that'll jam up the timeline for this week.
All right, Congressman Greg Steube, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today. We're going to be watching the process, obviously, very, very closely.
Anytime. Good to see you.